But now that you know the past is close and the miles are long, I'm going to tell you another story. 460 years ago, roughly as many years as about 10 of those choir members, rough, give or take. There was a fellow born, or shall we say, there was an event that took place in Geneva. It involved our great dear old friend, John Calvin. And apparently he had a problem with a fellow named Miguel Servet Villanueva de Schena, Spaniard, who was a physician and an amateur theologian. This is in the Renaissance, so he was a Renaissance man. He studied everything, and he was bright and fortunate and able to study in places like Toulouse and Paris and Montpellier. He practiced medicine in the city of Vienne, and on his off hours he wrote theology. Apparently he went and saw the Pope at one point and was so offended by the splendor of the Vatican, he thought something had to change. This is the 1500s. He was not alone. Martin Luther and John Calvin were already working on this issue. So he wrote a book or two, sent them to John Calvin, who didn't like them even a little bit. In fact, John Calvin sent notes back saying, "You're wrong, sir." And Michael Servetus would write back and say, "No, you're wrong, sir." And eventually they discovered they mutually loathed each other. But John Calvin was in charge of an entire city, Geneva, and Michael Servetus was just a doctor in a town south of Lyon in France. In fact, he was already under a death sentence for offending other people earlier. So he was going by the name Villeneuve as opposed to Servetus, but Calvin figured this out. And though he was no fond of the Catholic Church, he was only too glad to tell the Archbishop of Lyon who his real physician really was. And so Michael Servetus once again took to the road. He decided to go to Italy, hiding out perhaps in the humanist centers of Venice. But he was a fool. He decided to go by way of Geneva. Guess who spotted him? Guess who got arrested? Guess who got tried? Guess who got burned at the stake? On October 27th, 1553, 460 years ago today, Michael Servetus was incinerated with his books as a heretic. We used to think that they only incinerated Inquisition victims, but apparently John Calvin could work up the stern stuff if he needed to. But apparently not everyone agreed with him. He got a lot of criticism, and John Calvin wrote a book justifying why it was okay to kill heretics. Sebastian Castellio wrote back and said, "No, it's not okay to kill heretics." As Sebastian Castellio put it, "To kill a man is not to protect a doctrine, but it is to kill a man." When Servetus fought with reason and writings, he should have been repulsed by reason and writings. Now, this matters to you because our belief in freedom of conscience, not just for us, but what Baptists believe, even Catholics believe, began on October 27th, 1553. Calvin was outvoted by reality. Yes, Servetus died a hideous death, but because of that moment, the idea that you can believe what you can believe and I can't kill you for it, and I can believe what I can believe and you can't hurt me for it, those ideas began then, 460 years ago. 10 choir members, give or take. Which also means that in 10 more choir members, it could all be gone. In 1943, 70 years ago, on October 28th, tomorrow, Hanna Zenesh, a 22-year-old partisan Jew, native of Hungary, was on trial for treason. The Nazis decided that parachuting into the country and trying to overthrow their regime was treasonous. I suppose they're right in some technical sense of the word. And 18 days later, she was shot by a firing squad, aged 22. She wrote poetry. One of her poems reads, "Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the secret fastness of the heart. Blessed is the heart with strength to stop its beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame." Now, I'm sure neither Hannah Zenesh nor Michael Servetus expected or wanted to die for their principles. They were not martyrs, they were victims. But because of their fate, because they led principled lives and people without principles took them, we remember them. And that is the match consumed in kindling flame. And the question I put to you, the question I ask myself every day as I walk through the woods, be it in England or in Spain or on the way to work and back, the question I ask every day is, does my life shed light? We don't have to die at the stake to shed light. We don't have to die in front of a firing squad to shed light. We can do it by living. Does your life testify to the light within? I asked that question as I walked in the Spanish countryside. Well, it's almost All Hallows Eve, with its ghoulies and ghosties and long-leggedy beasties and things that go bump in the night. It is the second most profitable holiday in the country. Yep. More people decorate for Halloween than for Christmas. Just think of the horror movie industry and you can sense how much we love creepy, magical things. How many Twilight lovers are there in this room? But as Paul Coelho notes in his book, The Pilgrimage, we always have a tendency to see those things that do not exist and to be blind to the great lessons that are before our eyes. When we let our eyes see, our ears hear, and our feet feel, reality is just as enchanted as any funhouse. Yes, it's fun to pretend to be a ghost or a goblin. It's a hoot. It's wonderful. Because we want our lives to feel like magic. But here's the trick, dudes. It's already magic. It has been from the moment you were born. In fact, the fact that you were born is absolutely astonishing all by itself. Don't get over that. You were a miracle, and you continue to be one. Life is already magic. You don't have to set the world on fire. We are already aflame. Servetus and Zenesh remind us that life lived with conviction and courage can truly set the world alight. And every week, if you're here, you're asking for at least one spark of that to keep you going for another week. I pray that this hour does that for you. But if it doesn't, we'll be here next week. See you in church.